Hello dear viewers, Namaskar. Welcome to Moksha Media. You are with Moksha Hiramat. Some of you have heard something about Siddhaanta Shikhaamani. Siddhaanta Shikhaamani is an authoritative book on Veerashaivism. It is the Magnum Opus of Veerashaivism. Of course, it is a sacred book for Veerashaivas. Not only for Veerashaivas, for others who aspire and would like to try to have the knowledge and the enhancement of personality. Siddhaanta Shikhaamani is a unique text. It has its own importance among the books of religions. Siddhaanta Shikhaamani is in the language of Sanskrit. It is opined that it is written in the 8th century of Common Era. Of course, there are some controversies regarding the date of Siddhaanta Shikhaamani. Whatever the thing it may be, when a book becomes a popular one or an important one, automatically there may be some confusions, there may be some controversies. But it is better to look at Siddhaanta Shikhaamani from the positive point of view. Whether Siddhaanta Shikhaamani is written in the 8th century of Common Era or the 10th century of Common Era or 14th and 15th century of Common Era, that is not the matter for us. What is important for us is the content there in the Siddhaanta Shikhaamani. Of course, there is a possibility that the book, the treatise, might have been composed in the 8th century of the Common Era. Shivayogi Shivacharya composed Siddhaanta Shikhaamani. Shivayogi Shivacharya is belonged to Guru tradition. That Guru tradition is also called as a Shivacharya tradition. Shivayogi Shivacharya is fourth one in the Guru tradition, in the Shivacharya tradition. That Siddha tradition, yes, this line is, that is Siddha Shivayogi, Muddadeva, Siddhanatha, and Shivayogi Shivacharya is the fourth in that lineage. Of course, there is a tradition, there is a parampara that refers to a particular tradition, and that parampara should be continued on and on. The Shivacharyas comes in that line is use the same parampare, use the same tradition. Whether it is in the olden days and the modern days, but in one way or another way, that tradition is followed, that tradition is continued. So here we have to look at the tradition from the point of view of the content and from the point of view of importance and from the point of view of the ennoblement of personality and to have the moksha in the final stage. That is, generally Indians prefer to have the liberation from the cycle of birth and death. In one way or another way, Veerashaivism is not an exception to this. Everyone tries to liberate from this cycle of birth and death, from the pain of body and mind, from the sufferings of life. And Siddhaanta Shikhaamani tries to show the way how to we get liberated, how to man can be liberated from this life and how he can get moksha in the technical form, in the technical term. Of course, moksha is a technical term used to have the liberation in Indian philosophy. Different religions in Indian philosophy use different words for liberation, and Veerashaivism uses the word moksha for its liberation. Liberation means to relieve of all the problems in the life of a man. So, that Siddhaanta Shikhaamani shows the way to the liberation. That Shivayogi Shivacharya composed Siddhaanta Shikhaamani in the 8th century of Common Era. Whatever is passed from one generation to another generation, whatever is passed from one tradition to another tradition, is composed in the form of slokas, in the form of conversation. Siddhaanta Shikhaamani is composed in the form of conversation between Renukacharya and the sage Agastya. Of course, that composition is formed in the form of slokas. There are 1330 slokas in Siddhaanta Shikhaamani, and there are 21 chapters in Siddhaanta Shikhaamani, and out of these 21 chapters, 5 are related to the history of the tradition of Shivayogi Shivacharya. That is, the chapters from 1 to 4th and the 21st chapter tell us, reveal us something about the Siddha tradition of Shivayogi Shivacharya. That Siddha tradition should not be confused with the Vachanakara Siddharama. Siddharama is a Vachanakara of 12th century, a common era. Sonnaligi Siddharama is different from this Siddha tradition of Shivayogi Shivacharya. So, sometimes there will be a confusion regarding these names. Of course, the tradition, due to the tradition, the names will be repeated on and on in a different form. So that can be seen here also. That Siddhaanta Shikhaamani has 1330 slokas and it contains 21 chapters. Out of 21 chapters, first, second, third, fourth and the 21st chapter tell us something about the Siddha tradition, and it tells us in the form of slokas, and these slokas are 234, I think. From 5th chapter onwards until the 20th chapter, the Veerashaiva text is elucidated. That is, from 5th chapter onwards up to the 20th chapter, we come to know the kernel of Veerashaivism. Shivayogi Shivacharya goes on explaining Veerashaivism in Siddhaanta Shikhaamani step by step, one by one and logically. Here and there, he goes to the present and suddenly goes back to the past, and sometimes he mediates between the past and present. There, the readers will be confused. It is not the confusion of the theory propounded or pleaded by Shivayogi Shivacharya, but it is the mental stage of the readers which confuses them. If we are very careful in reading properly, then there is no question of confusion. But of course, while explaining the philosophical content and matters, we feel it very tough. That's why sometimes different words, different terminologies, different techniques are used. Those techniques are different in different ages. So, Siddhaanta Shikhaamani is composed in the 8th century. Even though it is composed in the 8th century, it talks of Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga, etc., etc. It tells us something about Ramayana, Mahabharata, Krishna, Bhagavad Gita, Vedas, Upanishads, Agamas, Shastras, Vedantas, Smritis, Shrutis, etc., etc. That is, Siddhaanta Shikhaamani is a text of Veerashaivism. Siddhaanta Shikhaamani begins to say something, to say Veerashaivism from Pindasthala to Jnana Shunyasthala. It elucidates on 101 sthalas. In order to attain moksha, a person should go through these stages. He has to pass from one stage to another stage, from Pindasthala to Jnana Shunyasthala. And then only we can say he has attained moksha, otherwise not. But most of the people, most of the persons, even Sharnas, have not attained the final stage of Veerashaivism. Veerashaivism, that is Siddhaanta Shikhaamani, explains it in 6 stages. Those 6 stages are, they are called sthalas. We simply say stages. There are 6 stages. They are Bhaktasthala, Maheshwarasthala, Prasadisthala, Pranalingisthala, Sharanasthala and Aikasthala. And a person should go from first stage to the last stage. That is, he has to begin his journey from Bhakta Sthala to and end his journey in the Aikya Sthala. That is, he can end his journey being with Shiva and becoming a Shiva oneself at the end. So, through these 6 sthalas, through these 6 stages, Shiva Yogi Shivacharya goes on and on explaining the things which are very important to attain these things. It may be Ashtavarna, it may be Panchachara, it may be 6 sthalas, 6 stages. These stages, that is Siddhaanta Shikhaamani, has these 6 stages. These 6 stages are divided again into divisions. There are subdivisions, that is Angasthalas and Lingasthalas. Angasthalas are explained in the first course of the Siddhanta Shikhaamani, and Lingasthalas are explained in the second course of Siddhanta Shikhaamani. Angasthalas are 44 in number and Lingasthalas are 57 in number. Totally they are 101 sthalas. And each sthala has Angasthala and Lingasthala. Accordingly, these 101 sthalas are explained. So, Shivayogi Shivacharya goes on and on explaining these 101 sthalas in his own style. Of course, he has used the style of conversation. The conversation takes place between Renukacharya on the one hand and Agastya on the another hand. Renukacharya is a pramata in Kailasa, in the Kailasa of Shiva. Of course, when the explanation begins, he tells in the beginning of the Siddhanta Shikhaamani something about the Kailasa. He describes Kailasa. He describes how Shiva has formed Brahma, how he tells Brahma to create the world, and how Brahma is confused in creation the world. At that time again Shiva shows how to create the world by creating these pramatas. And of course, Renuka and Daruka are pramatas. They are the trustworthies of Shiva. That is why Shiva gives them the responsibility of guarding that Kailasa. Anyhow, one day, when all the pramatas, all the persons in Kailasa are assembled, at that time Shiva tells Renuka to distribute everyone assembled there the Vilya. Vilya is the combination of areca nut, edible leaves, lime and some spices. And it has its own importance in Indian tradition. So when Shiva tells Renuka to distribute that Vilya to the persons assembled there, Renuka becomes very happy, and then he goes on and on distributing that Vilya to everyone assembled there. But in the fit of happiness, he has forgotten to give that villa to Daruka, that is his colleague. Daruka tells this act of Renuka to Shiva. Shiva feels unhappy. That is why Shiva curses Renuka to go to the earth and preach the Shivadvaita. Of course, as per the order of Shiva, Renuka is born in the Trilinga region of India. That Trilinga region is consistent Srishaila, that is the Mallikarjuna of Srishaila, Rameshwara of Draksharam, and Someshwara of Kollipaka, now in Andhra Pradesh, India. But once upon a time, this Trilinga region was the part and parcel of Karnataka. So anyhow, that Renuka is born in Trilinga region, and then he goes on and on performing his miracles, etc. And at that time, that Agastya has come to him to have his preachings. Agastya, the great sage at that time, comes to know by his vision the arrival of Renuka. So on the other hand, Agastya is waiting for the arrival of Renuka, and on one fine day, Renuka and Agastya meet each other, and Agastya requests, entreats Renukacharya to preach him Shivadvaita. Of course, Renukacharya becomes very happy because he feels that he has a good disciple, he has a good shishya. That's why he becomes very happy and goes on and on preaching that Shivadvaita to Agastya. So, he preaches in the form of conversation, and that conversation is in the form of slokas. Of course, those slokas are in the language of Sanskrit. In those days, the religious treatise should be in the language of Sanskrit. That was the system in those days. Of course, if we come to know the history of Lipi, the history of script, it is clear to us that whatever was there is recorded after the evolution of the script, whether it is the language of Kannada, Tamil, Telugu and Sanskrit. These scripts are evolved from Brahmi and Pali language used in the beginning, and as the time goes on and on, other languages have also their own scripts. After they have their own scripts, the persons begin to record what is there in the history and what is happened at that time. They composed it in the form of the script, in the form of slokas. Shivayogi Shivacharya does it in the same way. So, what is composed becomes Siddhaanta Shikhaamani. Of course, Siddhaanta Shikhaamani is a very serious treatise. It requires a sort of discipline to read it, to understand it. It requires the concentration of mind and the interest to read it also. It reveals so many things which are there in Indian darshanas, which are there in Indian philosophies. Especially it talks of dualistic, non-dualistic, monotheistic and monistic theories. It dwells on monistic theories of Shakti Vishishta Dvaita, that is the philosophy of Veerashaivism. So like this, Shivayogi Shivacharya explains 101 stalas, 101 stalas in a step-by-step way. He explains it very logically. What he explains it has become a boon to us. So, now everyone thinks of Siddhaanta Shikhaamani in a different way. That is, we feel that we will lose something if we don't know something about Siddhaanta Shikhaamani. To that extent that the Siddhaanta Shikhaamani has acquired the importance in the books of religions. That Siddhaanta Shikhaamani has been translated into 19 languages, I think. And the translation is also there. They try to translate it in other languages also. Anyhow, the Kannada version of Siddhaanta Shikhaamani has been translated from Sanskrit by Jagadguru, His Highness Chandrasekhara Shivacharya of Kashi Pita. And the English version of it has been brought by young Shivkumara Swami. Anyhow, my point is this, that Siddhaanta Shikhaamani has been translated into many languages and it is a book of importance. It says something about Shakti Vishishta Dvaita, that is monastic philosophy of Veerashaivism. That is why, in one way or another way, we have to refer it in order to make our personality a noble one, in order to liberate it from the pains of body and mind, in order to have the pleasure. That in order to have the knowledge of Shiva, we have to use that, we have to read that Siddhaanta Shikhaamani. Of course, there are so many things to be told, but due to the time constraint, I have tried to introduce the main points of Siddhaanta Shikhaamani to the persons interested in spirituality and other things also. Anyhow, that Siddhaanta Shikhaamani is also available in a digital form, and anyone can open that digital form and can study that Siddhaanta Shikhaamani in order to get the new things, in order to approach the world from a different point of angle, from a different point of view. Of course, this different point of view enable us and ennoble us. So, Siddhaanta Shikhaamani is an immutable treatise. If we miss it, we feel that we miss something serious in the life. That is why we have to have it, and we have to enrich our mind our spirituality, and etc. etc. So, dear viewers, share it and subscribe it, and see you in the next episode. Namaskar.